The story that you are about to hear is a compilation of documented true facts, featuring characters, events, or places that has played a role in shaping history. Please sit back and listen as I recite this narrative for you. Texarkana Moonlight Murders were a series of unsolved murders and other violent crimes committed in and around Texarkana in the spring of 1946 by an unidentified serial killer known as the Phantom Killer or Phantom Slayer. The killer is credited with attacking 8 people within 10 weeks, 5 of whom were killed. The attacks happened on weekends between February 22, 1946 and May 3, 1946. The first attack took place near the intersection of Richmond and Robinson Roads, near the site of the current site of the parking lot of the Central Mall. Back in 1946, this was still open country where young couples would park to kiss, cuddle, pet, and possibly make out. On the evening of February 22, 1946, 24-year-old Jimmy Hollis and his girlfriend, 19-year-old Jeanne Larey, were parked in a secluded corner on a lonely road just off Richmond Road in Texarkana. The young couple had spent the evening at the cinema and decided they would stop down the Lover's Lane for some alone time before Jimmy dropped Mary back home. They had been there about 10 minutes when a man walked up and pointed a flashlight at the couple. They had half expected to be interrupted by a cop. This was in an age when premarital sex still attracted public approbation. But as their eyes adjusted to the light, they could see that this man was not wearing a policeman's uniform. Instead, he wore a white cloth mask over his head with holes cut out for his eyes and mouth. The man shoved a gun at the terrified couple and ordered them out of the car, where he proceeded to pistol whip Hollis to the ground. Larey thought that the man had shot Hollis. The noise, however, was Hollis's skull fracturing 3 times from the violent blows. The hooded figure smacked Larey across the head with the butt of his gun before telling her to run, and while she fled down the road, she heard him kicking and stomping Jimmy. Then the masked man ran after her and knocked her to the ground. Jeanne said later that he did not rape but did sexually abuse her, apparently with the barrel of the gun. Moments later, headlights from an oncoming car scared the attacker away. Both Hollis and Larey were rushed to the hospital, where they miraculously both recovered from their injuries, but not without psychological trauma that would plague them for the rest of their lives. They did not know it at the time, but they were lucky to be alive. They had seen the attacker and survived, but the description they could give of the masked man was vague. All they knew was that he was about 6 feet tall. His face was obscured by a rough-looking hood of white material that appeared to be homemade, with holes punched for the eyes and mouth. This was not enough for the police to go on. They hoped that the attack on Jimmy Hollis and Jeanne Larey was an isolated incident. The story made the papers, but most readers assumed that the attack must be the work of a transient. Even the police thought the mysterious hooded man had jumped a freight car and was long gone. However, they were about to be proved most tragically wrong. The first double murder, which involved Richard Griffin and Polly-Ann Moore, happened 4 weeks later. Early on the morning of March 24, a driver on Highway 67 out in Bowie County noticed a 1941 Oldsmobile was parked about 100 yards off the highway. Griffin, a World War II veteran, was slumped over in the front seat, dead from 2 bullet wounds. Moore was sprawled out in the backseat of the car. She had been raped and then shot in the head. Both had been killed by bullets from a .32 caliber pistol, possibly a Colt revolver. While Richard Griffin had been killed where he sat, bloodstains and drag marks indicated that Polly Moore had been killed outside. She had been sexually abused. There were few fingerprints or footprints. A heavy downpour during the night had washed away most of the evidence. Within 3 days after the murder, Bowie County Sheriff's Office questioned between 50 and 60 people and tracked down 100 false leads. Eventually, they posted a $500 reward for information. None came. As the investigation stalled, they joined forces with the sheriff's offices of adjacent Cass County and Miller County, the Texas Department of Public Safety and Texarkana City Police Departments from both sides of the state line. Eventually, the FBI were called in, but they too were stumped. Betty Jo Booker, 15 years old, was an A student and an avid saxophone player and played each Saturday night with a group called the Rhythmaries, and that Saturday night was no different. At around 1:30 a.m., Booker's friend, Paul Martin, 16-year-old who she had known for 10 years, picked her up. The friend stopped at Spring Lake Park, which was just a few minutes from Booker's Sussex Downs home. The following morning, Martin's body was discovered on the edge of North Park Road. He had been shot 4 times. One bullet entered the back of his neck and exited through the front of the skull. One entered through the left shoulder, one went through his right hand, and the final one went in his face. A search party was assembled to look for Booker. 6 hours later, her body was discovered behind a tree around 2 miles from Martin's body. She had been shot once through the chest and once in the face. Forensic examination confirmed that the bullets that had killed Betty Jo Booker and Paul Martin were a .32 caliber and matched those that had killed Polly-Ann Moore and Richard Griffin 3 weeks before. Martin's car was found around 3 miles away from Booker's body with the key still in the ignition. After this second double murder, Texarkana was in a state of fear. Few people ventured out at night and no one ventured out alone. Out-of-town cars were followed. People strung out pots and pans in their backyards so they would be alerted if the Phantom was on the prowl. Hardware stores sold out of locks and guns. And even in the fierce heat of summer, windows remained closed and locked. Finally, almost exactly 3 weeks later, Virgil Starks was killed and his wife Katie was severely wounded. At around 9 p.m. on the night of Friday, May 3, Virgil Starks, 37 years old, was sitting down to listen to his favorite weekly radio show in the ranch-style home he shared with his wife Katie Starks, 36 years old. Suddenly, 2 shots were fired into the back of his head. The shots came through a closed window. Katie, who was upstairs, came rushing down where she saw her husband standing up with blood rushing down his body. Moments later, he slumped back into his chair. Virgil was dead. Katie ran to grab the phone and call the police, but as she reached the phone, she was shot twice in the face from the same window. Despite her injuries, Katie managed to pull herself up and grab a pistol which the couple kept in the living room. Blinded by her own blood, which was now streaming down her face, she heard the killer enter the home. Knowing he was coming to kill her, she got up and ran for her life. Katie made it to a neighbor's home, who then alerted the police. Miraculously, Katie survived. They called for help and she was rushed to the Michael Meagher Hospital, now St. Michael's, in Texarkana. Miraculously, she survived. The first bullet had penetrated her right cheek and exited behind her left ear. The second had smashed her jaw, then lodged in the muscles under her tongue. Emergency surgery removed it. Her condition remained critical for several days, then she pulled through. But she remained scarred, physically and psychologically, for life. When the police arrived at the farmhouse, they found 2 small bullet holes in the window of the front porch window. They were small caliber and had not smashed the glass. Entering the house, guns drawn, they found Virgil Stark's body lying on the floor, while the cushions of his easy chair smoldered from the unattended heating pad. There were bloody handprints on the walls and furniture. It seems that the intruder had dabbed his hands in the pools of Virgil Stark's blood. Now the police had fingerprints, lots of them. There were more on a flashlight he had dropped. Muddy footprints led in from the kitchen door to the Starks' bedroom, where the killer must have gone searching for Kate. Then they led back to the living room and out of the front door. The trail then led across the highway. It seems that he had pursued his quarry. Later, bloodhounds traced his scent along the highway for some 200 yards before they lost it. At this point, the killer had probably got into his car and driven off. Roadblocks were set up at both ends of Highway 67, but the killer got away. Following the attack on the Starks, the killer faded back into the shadows and never struck again. Eventually, life in Texarkana drifted back to a semblance of normality. After 3 months without phantom attacks, the Texas Rangers slowly and quietly left town to keep the Phantom from believing he was safe to strike again. The murders were reported nationally and internationally by several publications. As is the case with high-profile murder cases, there were numerous false confessors, one of which was the University of Arkansas freshman, 18-year-old H.B. Dodie Tennyson, who committed suicide in November of 1948. Tennyson left behind a suicide note in which he confessed to the string of murders. The prime suspect in the case was Ewell Sweeney, a career petty criminal who was linked to the murders primarily by statements from his wife, plus additional circumstantial evidence. Sweeney's wife Peggy would subsequently implicate him in the Texarkana Moonlight murders and describe the murder of Betty Jo Booker and Paul Martin in great detail. Following the confession, however, Peggy made conflicting statements and changed her story. No physical evidence against him, and with Peggy claiming her lawful right to refuse to testify against her husband, Sweeney was never prosecuted for the murders. In 1947, Sweeney was sentenced to life imprisonment for repeated auto theft but was released in 1978. Whether or not Ewell Sweeney was Texarkana's phantom killer is debatable, but there was never another attack following his arrest. And to this day, the killer remains at large. Hi, this is Twisted Mind. Quick question for you. Do you like reading romantic stories? If so, in the description box below is a link to an app called Dreame that features a writer under the pseudonym of Annabel Lee. Please click and follow her. Thank you. Hey everyone! I just wanted to express how grateful I am that you took the time to listen to my narration. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I am Twisted Mind and please enjoy the rest of your day. Salamat!